On the evening of November 23, 2009, in a dormitory at Peking University, China, 23-year-old Wang Yuan was texting with his girlfriend, 22-year-old Li Mengting. Their conversation proceeded normally until around 10 p.m., when Mengting suddenly stopped responding. Concerned by this unusual silence, Wang Yuan immediately called his girlfriend, but the call was abruptly disconnected. He tried calling again, but only received a subscriber unavailable message. Mengting's sudden silence left Yuan deeply worried. He blamed himself, thinking he might have inadvertently said something to upset her. The next morning, as soon as he woke up, Wang Yuan quickly checked his phone, hoping to find a message from Mengting, but there was still no response. He continued calling, but kept getting the same busy signal. 2 days passed in anxiety, with no word from Mengting, as if she had completely vanished. Growing increasingly concerned, Wang Yuan reached out to Mengting's cousin Li Hui to explain the situation. Upon learning of the circumstances, Hui immediately tried contacting Mengting's family, but worryingly, all calls went unanswered. Anxiety began to creep into Hui's mind, adding to Yuan's mounting concerns. Unable to wait any longer, Li Hui and Wang Yuan drove to the Qingcheng neighborhood, where Mengting's family lived, to check on the situation. When they arrived, they found the main door of Mengting's house locked tight, with no response to their calls. As Li Hui was about to contact the police, a nearby neighbor mentioned that Li Mangjun, Mengting's brother, had said he received a bonus of 30,000 yuan, approximately $4,200, from his company, and had taken the whole family on vacation to Shenzhen. Upon hearing this news, although still suspicious, they temporarily abandoned the idea of calling the police. However, they couldn't shake the nagging question of why all family members had their phones turned off. If they were on vacation, they would typically be taking photos and have their phones readily available, so why were they unreachable? By November 27th, there was still no news from Mengting's family. At this point, relatives began to worry about their safety and decided they couldn't wait any longer. They returned to Mengting's house to check the situation. Once again, no one answered the door, so the relatives decided to hire a locksmith. Unfortunately, the first locksmith was inexperienced and couldn't open the lock despite his efforts. Not wanting to waste more time, Li Hui immediately contacted another, more experienced locksmith. While waiting, Wang Yuan noticed that the back door of the house was slightly ajar. Since the house was on the second floor, he quickly borrowed a ladder from the building manager to peek inside through the rear window. When Wang Yuan climbed up and looked inside, what he saw horrified him. Through the window, he saw a person lying motionless on the floor. Wang Yuan was certain the person inside had met with foul play. It seemed something terrible had happened to this family. Li Hui immediately reported the situation to the police. Within minutes, law enforcement arrived at the scene and quickly broke through the door with specialized equipment. As soon as the door opened, a strong smell of blood hit their nostrils, forcing everyone to step back. The first sight that greeted them was a body lying motionless on the living room floor, face covered with cloth, surrounded by dried blood. The scene became even more horrifying as police and relatives continued searching other rooms. Each room revealed another body. The entire crime scene was like a nightmare come to life. After a thorough investigation, police determined that a total of 6 victims had been brutally murdered. Through identification by relatives, the victims were identified as household head Li Hanchao and his wife Xia Meihua, their second daughter Li Mengting, Wang Yuan's girlfriend, daughter-in-law Wang Meilan, wife of eldest son Li Mangjun, and 2 young grandchildren, a 6-year-old boy and a 1-year-old baby. Among the 7 family members, only Mangjun, the eldest son, was not present at the scene. This was clearly an extremely brutal case. Through forensic examination, medical examiners determined that all victims were killed with a sharp knife with fatal wounds to the neck area. The perpetrator seemed to have acted with precision and decisiveness. Each victim had only a single wound to the neck, with no signs of struggle or other injuries. Based on the dried blood condition and the state of decomposition, forensics concluded the murders had occurred approximately 5 days earlier. Notably, investigators discovered careful cleaning marks on the living room floor. In the corner, they found a bucket of bloodied water, likely used by the killer to erase evidence. All doors in the house were locked, with no signs of forced entry, and the main door was even locked from the outside. Significantly, the house remained undisturbed, showing no signs of being searched, and all valuable jewelry on the victims remained intact. Through questioning the victims' relatives, police learned that the family had recently won a substantial lottery prize. However, investigators quickly ruled out robbery as a motive, since all valuable jewelry on the victims remained untouched. The safe showed no signs of tampering, and nothing in the house had been disturbed. News of the 6-person massacre quickly spread throughout this upscale residential area, causing unprecedented waves of panic and horror. Residents couldn't believe such a savage crime could occur in their heavily guarded neighborhood, with 24/7 security and extensive surveillance cameras. Everyone wondered, what kind of person would dare commit such a brazen crime? They couldn't comprehend the motivation and cruelty of someone who would attack an entire family. When police questioned some nearby residents, they learned that the victim's family had just moved to the area, and many hadn't yet interacted with them. In this residential complex, most people were wealthy and busy with work, so they rarely communicated with each other. The closest neighbor said this family had no conflicts with anyone in the area, suggesting any disputes might have originated elsewhere. He added, "A few days ago, I heard Mangjun say he would take the whole family on vacation to Shenzhen. I never imagined they would all be murdered." Based on available evidence, police ruled out robbery as the motive for the murders. Therefore, they focused on investigating potential personal conflicts. The killer clearly harbored intense hatred toward the family, showing no mercy even to young children. From initial clues, one investigator suggested the perpetrator was likely someone familiar with the family. There were no signs of forced entry, indicating the killer had entered smoothly through the main door. What puzzled investigators was the motivation behind cleaning the living room floor, and particularly the mysterious absence of the eldest son, Mangjun. If he was alive, why wasn't he aware of the tragedy that befell his family? Or had he been killed elsewhere? Some investigators began to suspect Mangjun, as the evidence left behind made him the most suspicious suspect. However, the thought that a man could act so brutally toward his own parents, wife, and children made everyone shudder. To solve the case, the investigation team was divided into 2 groups. One focused on investigating the family's social relationships, while the other reviewed all security camera footage in the area to trace Mangjun's recent movements and monitor everyone entering and leaving the residential complex during the time of the murders. Through surveillance footage, investigators were chilled to discover that on the night of November 23, 2009, at exactly 10 p.m., Mangjun had driven home, the time believed to be when the murders occurred. Further footage showed that at 8:13 a.m. the next morning, he left the house carrying a cleaning cloth and a leather bag. Mangjun threw the cloth into a garbage bin before driving away. About 2 hours later, he returned to the house, stayed for 10 minutes, then drove away again. He wasn't seen after that. The timing of his return home coincided with when Mengting suddenly stopped responding while chatting with her boyfriend Wang Yuan. The detail about him throwing away the cleaning cloth connected to the cleaned floor at the crime scene. As investigators analyzed these details, they felt chills, suspecting they knew the killer's identity, but finding it hard to believe such a cruel truth. With increasingly clear evidence pointing to Mangjun, the investigation team quickly formed groups to track him down. During the investigation, they discovered that from November 24th to 25th, Mangjun's older son had been absent from school. Concerned about this unusual situation, the homeroom teacher had made several attempts to contact the family. Finally, at 7 a.m. on November 25th, the teacher reached Mangjun. The call was strange, with him mumbling only that he was driving before abruptly hanging up. After that call, Mangjun's phone became completely unreachable. This behavior further convinced investigators they were on the right track in pursuing their suspect. From camera footage, police identified Mangjun's vehicle as a silver 4-door sedan. Notably, the car still had no license plates, likely purchased recently with the family's lottery winnings. By tracing through traffic camera systems, investigators reconstructed the suspect's escape route. After leaving the crime scene, Mangjun had traveled to the train station and caught a train to Shenzhen, Guangdong Province. He hid there for 2 days before continuing his journey to Hainan Island. Early morning on November 28th, Beijing Police Department issued an urgent notice to Hainan police about a dangerous murder suspect hiding in their jurisdiction. Upon receiving the information and suspect's photo, Hainan police immediately deployed forces at key points, including train stations, airports, hotels, and other crucial areas. The manhunt quickly yielded results when they discovered Mangjun's hotel registration information. Although he had already left the room when they checked, as the saying goes, heaven's net has large meshes, but lets nothing through. At 5:50 p.m. on November 30th, Mangjun was finally captured while hiding in an entertainment club near the Hainan bus terminal. He was immediately escorted back to Beijing for investigation of the crimes he had committed. When arrested, Mangjun's face remained calm, showing no pain or regret, as if the murders he had just committed were ordinary events. During interrogation, faced with irrefutable evidence, Mangjun confessed and offered no defense. When police asked why Mangjun would murder his family so brutally, given they were his parents, wife, and children, he recounted the events of that fateful November 23rd night. According to his confession, around 10 p.m. that evening, he returned home drunk after drinking with friends. At this time, his parents and 2 children were already asleep, with only his sister Mengting still awake and using the computer in her room. Entering the bedroom, he found his wife Meilan lying on the bed with an angry, murderous look. As soon as he entered the room, Mangjun faced his wife's fury. Wang Meilan continuously berated him about coming home late, even suspecting him of having an affair. Since the family won the lottery, fear of her husband being tempted by younger, more beautiful women had consumed Meilan's mind, making her extremely harsh with him. Furthermore, she demanded money from him to purchase products. The deeper reason for this was Meilan's work at a multi-level marketing company, with monthly sales targets of 90,000 yuan, about $12,600. Meilan usually only achieves about half that, from 40,000 yuan to 50,000 yuan, equivalent to about $5,600 to $7,000. To avoid salary deductions and maintain her performance record, whenever she couldn't meet quotas, she forced her husband to buy company products. That fateful night, with the month ending, Meilan once again demanded Mangjun buy products to meet her required sales targets. His wife's accusations and demands fueled Mangjun's rising anger. He felt extremely unfair being suspected of infidelity just for coming home a bit late. What angered him more was that he earned most of the family's income and had repeatedly used his own money to supplement his wife's business performance just so she wouldn't lose salary. This time, Mangjun decided not to give in. This decision led to a fierce argument between the couple. Although arguments had become all too familiar in this family, and people usually let them resolve things themselves, that night things spiraled out of control. In his drunken rage, Mangjun pulled out a knife he had carried since 2008. The knife he had previously claimed to buy for its beauty had actually been prepared for a darker purpose. In a moment of madness, he stabbed his wife in the neck. After killing his wife, Mangjun sat on the bed, quietly smoking for 5 minutes as if contemplating something. But instead of stopping, he continued his path of evil. Entering his sister's room, without hesitation, he killed Mengting with a fatal knife strike. Afterward, Mangjun calmly washed the blood from his hands and face, then returned to his room to brood. The unusual sounds had awakened his father, Li Hanchao. With fatherly concern, he hurried to his son's room to see what was happening. But the moment he opened the door, Mangjun suddenly lunged forward and stabbed his father in the neck. Everything happened so quickly that Hanchao couldn't even cry out before taking his last breath. After killing his father, Mangjun sat silently on the living room sofa for about 20 minutes, as if lost in dark thoughts. Mrs. Yamehua, worried because her husband hadn't returned to bed, came out to look for him. In the dim nightlight, she saw her son sitting alone on the sofa. But just as she spoke, Mangjun acted ruthlessly, stabbing his own mother in the neck. While this bloody tragedy unfolded, the two children were still sleeping soundly, unaware of the tragedy befalling their family. After killing his mother, Mangjun sat in the living room crying for 2 hours, perhaps the only moment his humanity showed through. But then, a crazy thought invaded his mind. With the whole family dead, leaving the two children alive would only condemn them to a lifetime of suffering. With this twisted thinking, he decided to liberate both his children. With this insane thought, Mangjun gripped the fatal knife and entered the room where his two children slept peacefully. In the dim light, he committed his final atrocious act, taking the lives of his innocent children with the merciless blade. The pain and guilt after killing his entire family made Mangjun want to scream, but fear of discovery held him back. In his frenzy, he vented his anger on household items, throwing the TV and other objects onto the bed in a rage. After his fury subsided, as if to erase traces of his horrific crimes, he hastily cleaned bloodstains in the rooms with wet cloths. After finishing the cleanup, Mangjun left the house, disposing of the murder weapon and bloody cleaning cloth in a garbage bin. In his confession, he admitted knowing this horrific crime couldn't be concealed and had intended to end his own life. However, before doing so, he wanted to take one final trip to places he'd never been, as a way of enjoying his last moments of life. But fate didn't give him that chance. Just 4 days after fleeing, he was caught by law enforcement. Indeed, Mangjun's actions left many people bewildered and horrified. While killing his wife might be explained by a burst of anger and alcohol's influence, his subsequent actions were entirely different. Between each killing, he had enough time to think and realize his actions, but these pauses didn't seem to shake his determination to commit these crimes. Was there something wrong with his mental state? Could Mangjun have hated his family so much that it turned to deep resentment? In friends' eyes, Mangjun was usually gentle and careful in his behavior. No one could imagine he would commit such a cruel crime. Police also conducted a psychiatric examination of Mangjun, which showed he was completely lucid and aware of his actions. Through deeper interrogation, a frightening truth was revealed. The intention to kill his family had been deeply rooted in Mangjun's mind for a long time, all stemming from an unhappy childhood. He was born on December 3, 1980 in Shanggong Village, Daxing District, Beijing. Because his parents worked far away, he was separated from them from a very young age, living with his maternal grandparents until he was 7 years old. By then, the family had a new member, his sister, Li Mengting. Due to years of separation in early childhood, the relationship between Mangjun and his parents became distant, lacking intimacy. Although Han Chao and his wife always wanted their son to become talented, their educational methods were completely wrong. Following traditional outdated beliefs, they believed only physical punishment could make children respectful and filial. As a result, Mangjun frequently endured beatings and scolding whenever he made mistakes. Worse, his parents constantly compared him with other village children, endlessly criticizing their own son as inferior. They didn't hesitate to belittle and criticize Mangjun in front of others, while lavishly praising other people's children. Even more bitter was that his sister Mengting became the family's little spy, always tattling on her brother's actions to their parents. These instances of being reported by his sister usually led to painful beatings. This also created tension in the siblings' relationship. Once he found a stray dog and, moved by compassion, brought it home intending to care for it. But instead of seeing his son's kindness and compassion, Mr. Han Chao flew into a rage, yelling and ordering his son to get rid of the dog immediately. When he saw his son's defiant look, he kicked Mangjun, as if that was the only way to teach a child obedience. Physical punishment became such a regular part of Mangjun's life that he began to see it as normal. Fear drove him to sometimes avoid going home, choosing to spend nights hiding in cold woodpiles, preferring the bitter cold to facing his parents' beatings. Under this violent and loveless upbringing, Mangjun's personality gradually changed in concerning ways. In moments of extreme frustration and despair, thoughts of killing his parents began to form in his mind, though at that time they were just thoughts without any concrete plans. In 1996, at just 16 years old, unable to continue enduring the suffocating family atmosphere, Mangjun decided to leave his haunting home and move to Hongmen Town, Daxing, Beijing, to make a living. At that time, the average worker in Beijing earned only 800 yuan, about $112 per month. But with his quick wit and strong work ethic, Mangjun managed to earn an impressive 3,000 yuan, about $420 monthly. For the first time in his life, Mangjun tasted the sweetness of freedom and success. With his earnings, the first thing he bought was a mobile phone. Later, Mangjun often referred to 1996 as the happiest time of his life. Days without beatings, freedom to make his own life decisions, and enjoying the fruits of his labor. After earning money away from home, Mangjun wanted to return home to show off and prove his achievements to his parents. After more than a year away, he also felt somewhat homesick, so Mangjun decided to return. When seeing their son return after such a long absence, Mr. Chow and Mrs. Hua were moved to tears. Perhaps they feared their son's running away would repeat itself. The attitude of both spouses also improved considerably. Not long after, Mangjun married. His wife was also his first love, Wang Meilin. At the time, Meilin was working at a hair salon in Hongmen. With his business acumen, Mangjun advised his wife to quit and open her own salon. This decision brought unexpected success when, from a small initial salon, they developed into a chain of 5 thriving businesses. Everything seemed to be improving for Mangjun. After marriage, Mangjun and his wife moved out and lived in Hongmen. Because they had little daily contact with his parents, conflicts naturally decreased. However, this brief period of peace quickly faded. After their first child was born, the couple's affection gradually diminished, replaced by constant arguments and mutual suspicions of infidelity. When news of this reached Mangjun's parents, they returned to their harsh disciplinary methods of the past. Not only did they beat him, but they also verbally abused him terribly. What hurt more was that Wang Meilin, instead of supporting her husband, sided with his parents in oppressing him. Mangjun felt like a puppet, with every decision in his life, from marriage to having children, being controlled and manipulated by his parents. To him, strangers treated him better than his own family. Then one day, while drinking with friends, he bought a lottery ticket and unexpectedly won a prize worth 6 million yuan, about $840,000. With this money, he bought a luxury apartment in Beijing's Qingcheng area with 3 bedrooms and a spacious living room. Money seemed to bring happiness, and the whole family was filled with laughter when they moved in together in the new house. Ironically, this place would become the scene of a horrific tragedy. Mangjun used the remaining money to buy several properties, distributing them among family members. Once again, money temporarily smoothed over conflicts, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. When conflicts erupted one final time, all of Mangjun's years of accumulated resentment and hatred exploded into an uncontrollable madness. On November 20th, 2009, Mangjun had planned a trip to Shenzhen with friends. Later, he admitted that if that trip had gone as planned, perhaps the bloody tragedy would never have occurred. But fate had other plans. On November 23rd, a family relative was having a wedding, and Mangjun's parents forced him to postpone his trip to drive them to the celebration. At the wedding, once again Mangjun had to endure humiliation from his own father. Li Hanchao, upon seeing others' wealth, publicly criticized and humiliated his son in front of many people. This angered Mangjun even more, as he was far from the failure his father thought him to be. Besides the thriving hair salon chain, Mangjun was also running a restaurant and involved in financial services with credit cards. According to his testimony, in 2009, Mangjun had a monthly income of around $14,000, an impressive figure that made him proud of his success compared to his peers. However, no matter how hard he tried, he never received recognition from his parents, which deeply hurt and frustrated him. After being publicly humiliated by his father at the wedding, Mangjun sought solace in drinking with friends. But even this moment was interrupted by his wife's call, demanding he return home before 10 p.m. Feeling controlled and embarrassed in front of his friends, Mangjun went to another bar to drink alone, trying to suppress the boiling emotions inside. Finally, under pressure from his wife's constant calls, he reluctantly returned home at 10 p.m., the beginning of a horrific night no one could have anticipated. When accumulated hatred reaches its peak, humans can become more cruel than demons. On August 12, 2010, Lee Mangjun's trial was held at the Beijing People's Court. In court, Mangjun's face remained calm without a trace of remorse. The prosecution argued that Mangjun showed contempt for the law and had committed acts that were cruel and against family ethics. The nature of his crime was dangerous, and its consequences extremely serious. The court sentenced Mangjun to death for intentional homicide. Finally, Mangjun's in-laws demanded civil compensation of over 3 million yuan, about $420,000. According to statistics, the family's assets were worth 8 million yuan, about $1.12 million. However, only Mangjun's personal assets could be used for compensation, with the remainder to be inherited by relatives. In the end, Mangjun's paternal grandmother inherited 4.37 million yuan, about $611,800. His maternal grandmother inherited 2.66 million yuan, about $372,400. And his in-laws inherited 1.09 million yuan, about $180,000, $152,600. At the trial, Mangjun frankly admitted all his crimes. He expressed his wish for the death sentence to be carried out as soon as possible and committed to fully compensating the relatives according to the court's ruling. In an emotional moment during the initial trial, one of Mangjun's uncles couldn't contain his anger and attempted to attack his nephew. Faced with this reaction, Mangjun quietly said that everything had been decided, and he sincerely wished his uncle could beat him to somewhat ease his anger. Despite being furious at Mangjun's crimes, in the end, blood ties still remained in the relatives' hearts. Another relative expressed a desire to buy a cemetery plot for Mangjun. However, he refused. He confided that he no longer deserved to rest with his family and only wished to be cremated with his ashes scattered in the river, as a way to permanently separate himself from the loved ones whose lives he had taken. Through this story, we can see a painful family tragedy where childhood trauma silently developed into a terrible seed of hatred. Although Lee Mangjun achieved financial success, the emotional wounds from his parents' misguided discipline could never heal. Reality shows that all parents love their children, including Mangjun's parents. However, harsh educational methods, lack of affection, and recognition left deep wounds in their child's soul. Instead of encouraging and supporting their son when he achieved success, they continuously criticized and compared him, making all of Mangjun's efforts seem meaningless. Nevertheless, no reason can justify Mangjun's cruel actions. Murdering his entire family, especially his 2 innocent young children, is an unforgivable crime. This story serves as a warning about the importance of educating children with love, understanding, and encouragement, rather than with physical punishment and coercion. Next is a case of a family tragedy that occurred in Tsuen Wan, Hong Kong. Located in downtown Tsuen Wan, the An Fung building was once home to a happy middle-class family. The head of the household was Lian Fuku, a man who made his living selling poultry at the Yonguk Road Market. In 1992, he married Lam Lianjin, a beautiful woman from mainland China who was 18 years his junior. The couple had 2 children, their firstborn son, Lian Jialiang, born in 1995, and their daughter Lian Zhongyu, born in 1998. After marriage, Fuke continued working hard at his poultry stall to provide for his family. However, their peaceful family life was disrupted when Hong Kong experienced 3 avian flu outbreaks in 1997, 1999, and 2003. In response, in 2004, the authorities decided to reduce the number of live poultry stalls. Fuke voluntarily surrendered his business license and used the compensation money along with his savings to partner with relatives in opening the Fan Fan Ho restaurant on Wong Street. At the new restaurant, Lianjin worked the day shift while Fuke took the night shift. Both spouses were well liked by employees and neighboring business owners for their cheerful personalities, friendliness, and helpfulness. Through their dedication and hard work, the restaurant flourished. By 2009, they were able to buy out their partners' shares. Their stable income allowed them to purchase 3 apartments in the An Fung building, including a 600-square-foot unit on the 18th floor where the family lived. With their comfortable financial situation, Phuc and his wife could provide well for their children's material needs, such as computers for entertainment, tutoring for their daughter, bicycles, gaming consoles, books, manga, novels by Zhu Badao, Romance of the Three Kingdoms games, and more. In early 2010, even while the restaurant was undergoing costly renovations to attract World Cup viewers, the couple still took their children on vacation to Hainan Island. Beyond meeting material needs, the couple showed great love and care for their children. Their children, Jialiang and Zhongyu, both performed well in school and showed good behavior. According to his elementary school principal, Jialiang consistently ranked in the top 3 of his class during his final years, with excellent academic performance and conduct. After entering middle school, although Jialiang's academic performance wasn't as outstanding as in elementary school, it remained average. He played basketball, participated in the Youth Community Service Corps, and helped with school stage productions. His conduct remained good, and he always followed school rules. As for Zhongyu, she was an enthusiastic student who actively participated in school activities, serving as a Girl Scout, librarian, and discipline prefect. She maintained good grades, was polite and well-mannered, and had good relationships with her peers. Beyond their positive school behavior, according to Ms. John, a restaurant employee, both siblings would occasionally help at the restaurant and were very obedient and well-behaved. Neighbors shared similar observations, only noting that the son was somewhat quiet, introverted, and fond of gaming. The Jian family seemed to be a perfect example of family happiness. The 4 members lived harmoniously, showing love and support for each other. They had a cozy home, a stable business, and no financial worries. In the eyes of those around them, they were an admirable family. The future looked bright, as their eldest son was preparing to enter 10th grade, and their daughter was about to start 7th grade after the summer break of 2010. However, no one could have predicted that in just one night, this happy home would be shattered in a tragic and heartbreaking way. During that summer break, Phuc had planned to send his son to Canada and Shanghai to broaden his horizons, rather than staying home playing games and reading books. However, his son firmly refused to leave Hong Kong. Not wanting to force his son too much, he instead asked him to work part-time at the restaurant from the 18th or 19th, working 4 hours daily instead of sitting idle. Jialiang agreed without showing any resistance or reluctance. On the night of July 21st, amid stormy weather, the family gathered at the restaurant to help with work and share a late dinner. Around 10 p.m., Mangjun and young Zhongyu went home to rest, while Jialiang stayed behind to help and play games. It wasn't until 1 a.m. the next morning, after receiving a call from his sister, that he left the restaurant, leaving his father alone to work the night shift. Just 2 hours later, at 3 a.m., an unusual call came into the police station. On the other end was the voice of a teenage boy, saying he was at Hoi Ping Park in Suanwan and was injured. But more frighteningly, he confessed that he had just dealt with his mother and sister at their home on Hyungwo Street. Police were immediately dispatched to the park. There they found a teenager wearing a black t-shirt, his hands covered in blood, with injuries to his left fingers and toes. His right hand was severely injured. When confirming he was the one who had called to report the crime, he mumbled a haunting statement. "I've dealt with them. Isn't the world better off with fewer people?" Faced with this chilling confession, police immediately apprehended the teenager. Checking his backpack, they found suspicious items: a map of Hong Kong, a compass, a bloody cleaver, and a black glove stained with blood. To preserve forensic evidence, police carefully wrapped paper bags around his hands before transferring him to the hospital for emergency treatment. In the hospital room, under police supervision, the teenager continued to make disjointed statements like someone who had lost their mind. He recounted attacking his sister at 2:30 a.m. when he saw her wake up. Hearing her terrified screams, his mother rushed out and became the next victim. In his delirium, he mumbled, "I must continue, must deal with all of them. I'm a student at Lee Sang-pik School. The world has changed. People must die. The ice caps are melting." These senseless words further revealed the teenager's unstable mental state. In his delirious state, he said he had only 2 choices: continue his murderous rampage or turn himself in. Given his injuries, he chose the latter. Due to his unstable mental state, the teenager couldn't clearly provide his personal information or home address. It wasn't until 4 a.m. that police identified him as Jian Jialiang and located the crime scene. When they arrived at the apartment on Hung Wo Street, police witnessed a horrifying scene. The body of Nan Lianjin, the 42-year-old mother, lay face down near the main door. Zheng Yu, the 12-year-old girl, was found between the bathroom and bedroom door. Both had been brutally murdered. The crime scene was like a canvas of madness and brutality. Blood was splattered everywhere, on the torn sofa, bicycle, shoe cabinet, stuffed animals, and the TV stand. But most horrifying were the words and drawings carved into the apartment's outer wall with a hard object. Next to the words, "Happy Birthday Zhengyu," were profanities and religious symbols. Besides these findings, police also found a trail of blood on the floor leading outside. Following this blood trail, police deduced that after committing the crimes, Jialiang left the apartment closing the metal gate, but leaving the wooden door unlocked, then fled down the back stairs. However, after descending a few steps, he returned to the 18th floor before finally leaving. Due to the horrific nature of the scene, police weren't sure how to inform Fuke, who was working at the restaurant across the street. Finally, officers went to the restaurant to find him. At that time, the 60-year-old man was still diligently working, only aware that there were police cars outside but unsure of their purpose. When police entered, they told him there was an incident at his home and asked him to come to the station to assist with the investigation. Only at the police station did they break the terrible news to him and reveal that the perpetrator was his own son. Later, Fuke and his brother returned to the partially cleaned apartment for inspection, then visited Jialiang at the hospital. However, Jialiang's cold response left his father both heartbroken and terrified. Fuke described Jialiang's behavior. The victims were his mother and sister, but he didn't shed a single tear. I found that terrifying. He didn't cry, was very calm. I realized this was truly a frightening issue. I didn't dare scold him, afraid of agitating him. It felt like he had just made a minor mistake, like getting poor test results and being scolded by parents, slightly ashamed but unable to explain why. The next day after the autopsy, it was discovered that Mrs. Lianjin's body had 17 sharp weapon wounds, severing her trachea, carotid artery, and neck bones, nearly decapitating her. Young Zhengyu had 34 sharp weapon wounds on her face, neck, limbs, with her neck and head also nearly severed. Forensic experts speculated that the first victim lost consciousness immediately upon being attacked, while the second victim remained conscious during the attack. Why would Jialiang act so brutally toward his own mother and sister? What caused a happy family to meet such a tragic end? Initial investigation showed that Jialiang had no history of mental illness or violent behavior. However, his reactions after the crime were highly unusual. Instead of explaining his motives, he only repeated disconnected, incoherent statements. Even 40 hours after the crime, his mind was still obsessed with images of floods, melting ice, and delusional thoughts about the world being too crowded, needing to reduce the human population, and the world being better with fewer people. For Father Fuku, the shock was overwhelming. He couldn't believe his son could commit such horrific crimes. Through tears, he told the press there were no signs, no unusual behavior, no arguments at all. Faced with his son's strange words and behavior after arrest, he could only console himself by believing his son was mentally ill rather than a cold-blooded killer. For 15 years, I never noticed any signs of mental illness in my son, he said, choking back tears. On July 24th, Jialiang faced 2 murder charges at the Tsuenwan Juvenile Court. In court, he maintained an eerily cold demeanor. When asked about the charges, he merely nodded, and only after being prompted did he utter a brief, "I understand." Throughout the hearing, his eyes either stared straight ahead or were fixed on the floor, never once looking at his family members. His expression was vacant, as if his mind was somewhere far away. Given the defendant's unusual behavior and the severity of the case, the judge agreed with the prosecutor's proposal. Jialiang would be transferred to Siu Lam Psychiatric Center to await evaluation by two mental health experts. The experts would determine whether he truly suffered from mental illness and, more importantly, whether he had the capacity to be held criminally responsible for his actions. The trial would continue on August 6th. After the defendant entered the psychiatric center on July 31st, a noteworthy article was published that presented information completely contrary to what Mr. Fuchs and neighbors had previously stated about Jialiang showing no unusual signs. According to someone claiming to be Jialiang's classmate, unusual signs had appeared before the summer break. This classmate revealed that in Jialiang's pencil case, friends had discovered many pairs of scissors and magnifying glasses. Notably, when asked about the purpose of these items, Jialiang chose to remain silent. The article also quoted a restaurant employee named Kwang, who recounted a significant incident. Once after returning from a delivery, Jialiang suddenly became enraged with the restaurant owner for no apparent reason. Additionally, according to the newspaper's sources, at the moment police formally made their accusations, Jialiang had one complete breakdown and sobbed uncontrollably. However, after this crying episode, he quickly regained his unusually calm demeanor and fell into complete silence. These contradictory accounts were not officially confirmed by authorities or Fuchs. Although unconfirmed and uncertain whether true or false, what this article pointed out about the defendant's mental state having issues beforehand was likely true. On August 6th, at the next court session, the defendant maintained the same attitude as on July 24th, with a blank expression and no eye contact with family members. The psychiatric expert assessed that he was fit to stand trial, but still needed to be detained at the treatment center, presumably due to genuine mental illness. By 2012, the defendant was approved by the Department of Justice to have the charges reduced to manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility. On February 1st, the case was tried at the High Court, and the defendant pleaded guilty. In court, both prosecution and defense each invited two psychiatric experts, all four of whom diagnosed the defendant with schizophrenia requiring inpatient treatment. The psychiatric report revealed that sometime before the incident, the defendant had shown signs of illness, frequently hearing voices in his head, discussing issues such as science and technology, environment, and population growth. These voices convinced him that the world had too many surplus people and he wanted to prevent population growth. Jialiang believed that reducing the population by half could prevent pollution, save resources, and avoid waste. From there, he began thinking about the meaning of life, believing that life should be full of experiments and killing could be one of those experiments. He didn't think killing was wrong and didn't care who the victims would be. This reasoning can be seen through his correspondence with his father during treatment at the center. In his letters, he expressed intense hatred for humanity, believing humans were selfish and greedy and shouldn't exist on Earth. He saw himself as a savior with divine talent, carrying the mission to change the world and improve human life. He had planned the murders for a month, thinking that if he could escape police capture, he would continue his actions or do something reckless. Finally, he chose Wednesday, July 21st, to act because he liked the numbers 7 and 3. On the day of the incident, he went to the beach, streets, and crowded places looking for targets, but somehow couldn't act. Later, he returned home and considered whether to target his mother and sister. That night, his mother and sister went to sleep at 1:30 a.m., and he predicted they would be sound asleep 45 minutes later, so he waited for his opportunity in the living room. At 2:15 a.m., seeing his sister leave her room, he immediately attacked with the cleaver. Minutes later, his mother heard the noise and ran out, meeting the same fate. Afterward, he changed out of his blood-stained tank top, put the cleaver in his backpack, and left home. On his way, he intended to continue killing, even targeting a passerby's neck, but was pushed away. He then gave up. Next, he went to the park to rest. Due to injuries sustained during the crime and inability to attack passers-by, he felt he had failed and turned himself in at 3 a.m. The defense lawyer also noted that the defendant's father, Mr. Fuchs, like many Hong Kong people, was a hard-working small business owner, but fate had dealt him an unbearably heavy blow. In one night, he lost his beloved wife and daughter, while his only son faced legal consequences. Yet, despite being immersed in profound grief, he didn't abandon his son, frequently visiting and actively providing information to help doctors treat him. Given these circumstances, the lawyer requested the court allow the defendant appropriate treatment. After considering all aspects of the case, the judge made the final ruling. Recognizing this as a profound tragedy for both the family and society, the court sentenced Lian Jialiang to indefinite treatment at a psychiatric hospital. This decision was made with the belief that only proper treatment and rehabilitation could bring the best outcome, not just for the defendant, but for society as well. Later, Hong Kong filmmakers adapted this case into a movie. The film authentically recreated the Jian family tragedy and received positive reviews from critics and audiences. The work not only told this painful story, but also raised profound questions about human psychology, society's responsibility in early detection and treatment of mental health issues, and the fragility of family happiness. And that's it for today's 2 cases. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.